My name is Amelia, and for as long as I can remember, the scent of damp earth and jasmine has been the smell of home. I am a landscape architect, a profession that feels less like a job and more like a calling. It's a quiet art, a conversation with the seasons, and it has taught me the value of patience, of nurturing roots so they can grow strong enough to withstand any storm. My life, until recently, felt much like one of the gardens I so carefully tend, ordered, beautiful on the surface, but with a complex, hidden world of struggle and resilience just beneath the soil. I lived, in Savannah, Georgia. My home was a narrow, elegant brick row house on a quiet, oak-draped street, a place of hushed history and dappled sunlight. It wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary. I'd bought it 10 years ago with an inheritance from my grandparents, two endlessly kind souls who had taught me to see the poetry in a gnarled tree branch and the hope in a new bud. I poured my heart, my savings, and my own two hands into that place. The house and the deed to it were in my name alone. This was a point of quiet pride for me, a testament to my own hard work and the legacy of love my grandparents had left me. The crown jewel was the garden, a secret courtyard in the back that I had transformed from a patch of forgotten dirt into a lush, green haven, walled in by old brick and fragrant with gardenias and climbing roses. My husband, Leo, has been my partner in this life for 12 years. Leo is charming, handsome, the kind of man who can make friends in a grocery line. He works in finance, a world of sharp angles and concrete numbers that has always felt alien to my own. In the beginning, our differences were what drew us together, his pragmatism grounding my creative spirit, my dreamer's heart softening his corporate edges. We built a life, shared laughter, and weathered the small, ordinary storms of marriage. But over the past few years, a subtle frost had begun to creep into the edges of our garden. Leo grew restless, his charm thinning to reveal a current of dissatisfaction. He began to see my independence not as a strength to be celebrated, but as a quiet reproach to his own perceived lack of achievement. And then there was Clara, my mother-in-law. Clara is a woman who wields pleasantries like finely sharpened knives. Her criticisms are always wrapped in the silken ribbon of concern, delivered with a gentle smile that makes you question your own sanity. "Oh, Amelia, darling," she'd say, running a finger over my antique wooden dining table, "this is lovely, but dust does settle so quickly on these old things. A modern piece would be so much easier for you to manage." Or, while I was preparing dinner, she would peer into a pot and sigh softly, "I do admire your courage in the kitchen, dear." My Leo has such a simple palate, you know. He was raised on very traditional meals. I learned early on that to engage with Clara was to lose. She fed on reaction. So, I developed a strategy of serene detachment. I would smile, nod, and offer her a cup of tea. My refusal to rise to her bait was, I think, a source of profound irritation for her. Leo, for his part, remained a passive observer. "That's just how she is, Ames," he'd say with a shrug, his eyes pleading with me not to make an issue of it. "She means well. You know how mothers are." I didn't know. My own mother, gone now for 5 years, had been my fiercest champion, a woman whose love was a fortress. Clara's love was a siege. But for the sake of peace, for the sake of the man I loved, I absorbed the little cuts and papered over the cracks. I told myself that this was the work of marriage, the tending of a garden that sometimes required pruning back the thorns. Our 12th anniversary was approaching. We'd had a difficult year, marked by a growing distance and conversations that felt like carefully navigated minefields. So when Leo announced he wanted to throw a grand party, I was genuinely touched. It felt like an offering, a gesture toward mending what had been frayed. He took care of everything: caterers, a string quartet to play in the corner of the garden, and he even strung hundreds of tiny, glimmering fairy lights through the branches of the ancient magnolia tree. The effect was breathtaking, transforming my beloved garden into something out of a fairy tale. I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was him trying to find his way back to us. I chose my dress with care, a simple silk sheath the color of a dusky evening sky, and when I saw our home filled with the warm faces of our friends and family, my heart felt full. The evening was perfect. The music was lovely, the food was delicious, and the savannah air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. I felt Leo's hand find mine, and I squeezed it, a silent thank you. He smiled at me, a brilliant, confident smile that for a moment made him look like the man I had first fallen in love with. Later, as the sky deepened to indigo, he tapped a champagne flute with a fork. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," he said, his voice resonating with a practiced warmth. The chatter died down, and all eyes turned to him. I stood beside him, smiling, anticipating a sweet toast to our years together. "Tonight is a deeply special occasion," he began, "not only because it marks 12 wonderful years with my beautiful wife, Amelia." He paused, and a smattering of applause rippled through the garden. I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "But also," he continued, his smile widening, "because we have another joy to share. We're starting a new chapter in our family. My mother, Clara, will be moving in with us." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. The air left my lungs. The sounds of the party, the music, the murmuring guests, faded into a dull, distant roar. I saw a few people clapping, some looking confused, their smiles faltering as they glanced at my face. I turned my head slowly to look at Leo, searching his eyes for a hint of a joke, a terrible, misguided prank. But there was none. He was beaming, radiating a triumphant pride that made my blood run cold. And then I saw her, Clara, standing just behind Leo's shoulder, a flute of champagne held aloft. She caught my eye, and a slow, smug smirk spread across her face. "You'll adjust, dear," she murmured, her voice a low, victorious hum meant only for me. "I always do." Her gaze was hard, glittering with a triumph she didn't bother to conceal. In that moment, the entire landscape of my marriage shifted, the beautiful garden turning into a cold, alien terrain. He had planned this. They had planned this, together, behind my back, and chosen to announce it here, in a garden of my own making, in front of everyone I knew, trapping me in a cage of social decorum. They expected me to smile, to nod, to accept. My own glass felt impossibly heavy in my hand. I could feel the eyes of my friends on me, my brother Ben's concerned frown from across the lawn, my best friend Chloe's sharp, questioning gaze. They were all waiting for my reaction. Leo and Clara were waiting, too, so certain of their victory. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my patience for weakness, my silence for submission. They had forgotten that the quietest gardeners are the ones who know best how to uproot things that don't belong. A strange calm settled over me. I took a deliberate, slow sip of my champagne, letting the cool bubbles ground me. I set the glass down on a nearby table with a soft click. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence. I looked from Leo's expectant face to Clara's condescending smirk. I forced a smile, a bright, serene curve of my lips that didn't reach my eyes. "Wow," I said, my voice even and clear. "What a surprise." Clara's smirk softened into a look of saccharine sympathy. "I know it's a lot to take in, darling," she cooed, stepping forward to pat my arm. "But it just makes the most sense. You work such long hours, and I'll be here to help manage the house. We might even make a few little changes to make things more comfortable. Starting with your studio upstairs. The light in that room is so much better for my watercolors." A few of the guests chuckled, assuming this was the familiar, gentle ribbing of family. But I heard the truth beneath her words, the casual declaration of her intent to dismantle my life, piece by piece. Leo had not just invited his mother to live with us, he had invited her to replace me in my own home. He had ambushed me, counting on my unwillingness to create a scene. But what Leo didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that their conspiracy was no longer a secret. He had grown careless, so sure of my obliviousness. 2 weeks ago, he had rushed out of the house for a client dinner, leaving his laptop open on his desk. He was pathologically private about his computer, and the sight of it, glowing and unattended, was so unusual that it triggered a warning bell in my mind. An email was open on the screen, a thread between him and his mother. The subject line was, "The Savannah Plan." My heart had hammered against my ribs as I read it. The words blurred, then sharpened with brutal clarity. It was all there, a meticulously plotted coup. "I'll tell her at the anniversary party," Leo had written. "In front of everyone. She won't be able to make a scene. She'll get over it. Once you're settled, we can start the conversation about putting my name on the deed. It's only fair, since it's my marital home too. One step at a time." My marital home. The phrase had twisted in my gut like a knife. The house I had bought, restored, and filled with love. The garden I had coaxed from nothing. He saw it not as our shared life, but as an asset to be acquired. The betrayal was so profound, so chillingly calculated, that it had extinguished the last embers of my love for him. I had closed the laptop, my hands shaking not with fear, but with a cold, clarifying rage. I didn't cry. I got my purse, walked out of my beautiful, violated home, and drove straight to the office of the most respected real estate lawyer in Savannah. Now, standing in my garden, surrounded by the soft glow of the fairy lights, I drew on the memory of that moment. The moment my grief had hardened into resolve. I looked at the expectant faces of our guests, at Chloe's worried eyes, and Ben's protective stance. I met Leo's gaze and then Clara's. I took a slow, deep breath. "Actually," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound clarity that surprised even me. I reached into the small, elegant clutch I was carrying. "I have an announcement of my own." A hush fell over the garden. Even the string quartet seemed to falter. I pulled out a folded sheaf of papers and carefully unfolded them. I held the document up, the crisp white paper looking stark against the deepening twilight. "This house," I said, my voice steady and unwavering, "is sold." The silence that followed was absolute, a sudden void where the cheerful party had been. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the garden. Leo's smile didn't just fade, it shattered. His face went slack with disbelief. "What?" he whispered, the word a ragged puff of air. Clara blinked rapidly, her head cocked as if she hadn't heard me correctly. "You're joking," she said, her voice sharp, stripped of its usual honeyed coating. "This is a terrible joke, Amelia." I turned to look directly at my husband. "I'm not joking, Leo," I said, enunciating each word with precision. "I sold the house. I accepted an offer last week. We closed 3 days ago. The deal is done." Somewhere behind me, I heard Chloe let out a sound that was half gasp, half laugh. My brother, Ben, simply stared, a slow, incredulous grin spreading across his face. Just then, as if on cue, the old iron latch on the garden gate clicked open. It was a sound I knew intimately, a sound that had always meant a friend was arriving. Heads swiveled toward the gate. Leo's expression was a mask of confusion. Clara clutched her champagne flute, her knuckles white. I felt a flutter of nervous energy, but I held my ground. This was the final piece. A woman stepped through the gate and into the soft light of the garden. She was in her late 60s, with a cascade of elegant silver hair pulled back in a loose knot, and kind, intelligent eyes that surveyed the tense scene with a calm curiosity. She wore a simple linen dress and carried a bottle of wine. "Amelia," she said, her voice warm and cultured. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop this off." I gave her a genuine, grateful smile. "Eleanor," I said, "your timing is perfect. Come in." I turned back to the stunned audience. "Everyone," I announced, letting the silence stretch for a delicious, agonizing moment, "I'd like you to meet Eleanor Vance. She's the new owner of this house." If the previous silence had been absolute, this one was deafening. It was a physical presence, heavy and suffocating. Leo stumbled back a step, as if I had physically struck him. Clara's mouth hung open, a perfect, silent O of outrage. Eleanor, bless her heart, gave a polite, gracious nod to the assembled crowd. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," she said, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the simmering chaos. "Amelia and I finalized the sale on Tuesday. It's a truly beautiful home. I'll be taking possession next Friday." That broke the spell. "You sold the house?" Leo's voice was a raw shout, cracking with fury and disbelief. He took a step toward me, his face turning a blotchy red. "Our home? You sold our home without telling me." A small, mirthless laugh escaped me. "Oh, Leo, I'm so sorry," I said, my voice dripping with mock sincerity. "I seem to have forgotten the part where we consult each other on massive, life-altering decisions. My mistake." His face contorted with rage. "This is insane, Amelia. Where are we supposed to live? Have you thought about that?" "We?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not sure. Perhaps you and your mother could find a charming little place together. You seem to be so in sync with your planning lately." Clara sputtered, her body jolting as if she'd been zapped with electricity. "Don't be ridiculous," she shrieked, her voice high and shrill. "I am not going to be scrambling for an apartment. This was supposed to be my home." "Was it?" I countered, my voice low and dangerous. "Or were you just perfectly happy to help your son make me homeless in my own house?" Clara opened and closed her mouth, but for the first time in the 12 years I had known her, she was speechless. The guests had started to murmur amongst themselves, the whole sordid drama laid bare for them to see. Some began to quietly edge toward the gate, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. Eleanor Vance, a woman of impeccable grace, stepped forward slightly. "Pardon my intrusion into what is clearly a private family matter," she said gently, but Amelia had mentioned she would need about a week to move her personal belongings. "However," she added, her gaze shifting coolly between Leo and Clara, "if you two require a bit more time to make other arrangements, I would be willing to discuss a short-term lease. At the current market rate, of course." "Rent?" Leo choked out the word as if it were poison. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed, her expression unreadable. "I'm not in a desperate hurry to move in. If you and your mother need to rent the 2 spare bedrooms for a few weeks while you search for a new place, I am open to that conversation." I watched the gears turn in Leo's head, the frantic calculation of finances, the dawning horror of his situation. He looked at his mother, whose face had gone pale and tight. The triumphant queen of a few moments ago was gone, replaced by a pinched, furious old woman. But I wasn't finished. I had one more stone to turn. I smiled sweetly at Eleanor. "Oh, that's incredibly generous of you," I said. "But as for me, I won't be needing any extra time." Leo's head snapped back toward me. Clara looked as though she might faint. "What do you mean?" Leo asked, his voice strained. I leaned back against the smooth bark of the magnolia tree, savoring the moment. "I mean, my things are already packed," I said. "Most of them are already at my new place, in fact, my new condo overlooking the river. I moved the last of the boxes this morning while you were out confirming the caterers." My friend Chloe, who had been watching with a kind of horrified glee, finally let out the laugh she'd been suppressing. She knew. I had told her everything, and she had helped me pack, our sessions fueled by righteous anger and expensive wine. Clara physically grabbed Leo's arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "What is she saying?" she demanded, her voice a panicked hiss. I spelled it out for them, slowly and clearly, a teacher explaining a simple concept to a particularly dense student. "It means you two have exactly 7 days until Eleanor takes possession. You can either be out by then, or you can start paying her rent. You'll need to provide a security deposit and the first month's payment in advance, I imagine." Eleanor nodded sagely. "Standard practice," she confirmed, pulling her phone from her purse. "I can draft a simple rental agreement right now if you'd like to review it." That was the moment Leo finally broke. The carefully constructed facade of the charming, successful husband crumbled into dust. "You can't do this," he roared, lunging toward me. My brother Ben instantly stepped between us, a solid, immovable wall. "Back off, Leo," Ben said, his voice a low growl. Clara, still clinging to her son's arm, shrieked, "She's your wife, Leo. A wife is supposed to support her husband, to stand by him, not betray him like this." The hypocrisy was so staggering it was almost funny. "Betray him?" I repeated, my voice rising to meet hers. I fixed my gaze on Clara. "You mean the way you two conspired to throw me out of my own home? The way you planned to manipulate me into signing over the deed?" Leo flinched as if I'd struck him. But it was Clara's reaction that was truly telling. Her eyes widened. "The deed," she repeated, turning to her son. "What is she talking about, Leo?" "Oh!" So he hadn't told her that part of the plan. He hadn't shared the detail about his ultimate goal. He had used her, too. "Tell her she's lying," Clara demanded, shaking his arm. Leo stood frozen, trapped in the web of his own deceit. His face was ashen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The silence was his confession. The realization dawned on Clara's face, a slow, horrifying wave of understanding. She wasn't his partner in this coup. She was just another pawn. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling with a new, different kind of fury. She took a step back from him, her hand dropping from his arm as if it had been burned. "You were going to try and take the house from her." It wasn't a question. "Mom, it's not like that," Leo stammered, but his words were weak, hollow. "You absolute fool," she hissed, and the venom in her voice was startling. She wasn't defending him. She was turning on him. "You told me we had a plan. You told me this was for us, for our family." "It was. You were using me," she accused, her voice cracking. "You were using me to get into the house, and then you were going to try and take it for yourself. You'd have probably thrown me out next." Leo's jaw worked, but no sound came out. His silence was the most damning answer of all. Clara stared at her son, her face a crumpled mask of betrayal. The arch-manipulator had been out-manipulated by her own flesh and blood. In that moment, I almost felt a sliver of pity for her. Almost. She had built her life on a foundation of control and subtle cruelty, and now she was watching it all collapse, brought down not by me, but by the greed she herself had nurtured in her son. With a final, withering look at Leo, Clara turned on her heel, snatched her purse from a chair, and stormed out of the garden, pushing past the few remaining, shell-shocked guests without a word. Leo stood alone in the center of the garden, the fairy lights twinkling mockingly around him. The party was over. My brother gave him one last warning look before coming to stand by my side. "You want him gone?" Ben asked quietly. I looked at Leo. The rage had drained out of him, leaving behind a hollowed-out man. For the first time, I didn't see a monster or a villain. I just saw someone small and weak, someone who had let his own insecurities curdle into a poison that had destroyed everything. "Amelia," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Can we please just talk? For a minute?" Alone. The anger that had sustained me for weeks began to recede, replaced by a vast, quiet sadness. I nodded. We sat on the steps of the back porch, away from the watchful eyes of my brother and Chloe and the ever-poised Eleanor. The night was quiet now, the only sound the distant chirp of crickets. "I messed up, Ames," he said, staring at his hands. "I messed up so badly." I waited, saying nothing. He took a shaky breath. "I don't know when it started. Mom kept getting in my ear, you know how she is, saying I was letting you walk all over me, that you had this beautiful house and this successful career, and what did I have? And I was weak enough to listen. I started to resent you. I resented you for your strength, for your talent, for this garden." He gestured vaguely at the beautiful space around us. "It was easier to be angry than to feel like a failure. So you decided to steal it from me?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. He winced. "I told myself it wasn't stealing. I told myself it was rebalancing things. I love you, Amelia. I swear to God, I love you. I just got so lost. I never thought it would come to this. I never wanted to hurt you. His words were a vapor, dissipating into the humid night air. 12 years of memories of shared laughter and quiet moments flickered through my mind. But they felt like scenes from someone else's life. I looked at the man beside me, this stranger who had plotted to break my heart for his own gain, and I felt nothing but a profound, sorrowful emptiness. I think you love the idea of me, Leo, I said softly. You love the life I built. But you don't love me, because you don't even know me. If you did, you would have known I would never let you, or anyone, treat me this way. I paused, letting the truth of it settle between us. And I don't love you anymore. He flinched, a sharp, ragged intake of breath. His head snapped up, and in the dim light, I saw tears welling in his eyes. This, I knew, was real. This was not manipulation. This was the pain of consequence. Ames, please. I stood up, brushing the dust from my dress. My lawyer will be in touch with yours about the divorce, I said. We can sort out the rest of our assets then. He didn't try to stop me as I walked away. He just sat there on the steps of the house that was no longer mine, in the ruins of the life he had demolished. A week later, from the wide balcony of my new condominium, I watched the sun set over the Savannah River. The apartment was smaller, more modern, but it was filled with light and the promise of a new beginning. It was mine. All mine. Chloe was with me, pouring 2 glasses of chilled white wine. She handed one to me, her eyes full of warmth and pride. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. I clinked my glass against hers. To strong roots, I corrected her gently, a small smile on my lips. As I took a sip, a gentle breeze blew in from the river, carrying the distant scent of the sea. I thought of my garden, now in the gentle, capable hands of Eleanor Vance. I didn't feel loss. I had given up a house, but I had reclaimed my home, the quiet, unbreachable sanctuary within myself. For the first time in a very long time, I felt utterly, completely, and peacefully free.